Students, now I am going to tell you what you are going in brief what you are going to study in this poem. As a mouthpiece of a number of people, the poet begins by saying that the parents should keep the children away from the television set. He makes this statement in a very aggressive way. He compares the television set to be as bad as an idiot box. Hence, the children should be kept away from the television set, or maybe the best part would be instead never install the television sets in the house. If there would be no television sets, the children would not have it to waste all their precious time in front of them. Next, the poet speaks as if he had taken great experience by making a long research on the evil effects of watching television by visiting a large number of households in Britain. He says that in almost every house, the children are seen glued to the screen of the television. They are so much lost in watching the shows and programs that their mouths remain gaping and eyes fixed to the screen until they seem to be popping out of their sockets. The children watch the television in different postures, that is, in half-lying position, while relaxing in some odd manner. The poet humorously points out the seriousness of the matter. So, the poet is having a comical look and is saying that a dozen eyeballs were found scattered on the floor in a house the previous week. The children sit and keep on staring until they get fully lost in the visuals. They sit fixedly at one place as if they were hypnotized by some power, and they remain in that position until they become lost in the shockingly unpleasant and useless material shown on the television screen. The parents feel and think that they have relief from their children, as they would not jump from the window as they would not jump from the window sill if they watch the television. They would not fight, kick and hate each other. In the meantime, the mother will be able to prepare lunch and wash dishes in the sink. At the same time, the poet questions the parents of the bad effects which the television has on their children. Then the poet, Roald Dahl, keeps on adding by writing in capital letters that he is saying over here that the negative impact of television on children is too much. It gradually stops the progress of their power of understanding and imagining things around them. He emphasized on the fact or he made an emphatic appeal, students, as I have mentioned earlier, that the poet says that watching the television fills their mind with so much material and other stuff that they hardly think and imagine freely of their own. The originality of their thoughts is completely lost. A child's mind becomes blocked to the natural world. They are no more enjoying the natural scenery. They fail to enjoy the world of fantasy and fairyland. Say, students, here beautifully the poet has said that all this imagination, fantasies, childhood fantasies, fairy land imagination, all these are very much expected behavioral traits among the children, but this watching the television takes away the precious time to imagine, to be in the world of fantasies. Now, in the childhood, the child can afford to be in this world of fantasy. As he grows up or as she grows up, he is robbed from this bliss, from this bliss of remaining and wandering in the world of imagination, as he or she will be being burdened with responsibilities. So, next the poet anticipates what the parents' next question would be. They might agree to take away the television set from the children, but will ask how they are supposed to now keep their children occupied. The poet asks the parents to recall how children had kept themselves entertained before television was invented. So the poet is asking the parents instead that what happened to your time, how you yourself used to keep yourself busy, occupied when you were a child before the television was invented. So at the probable question which could have reached the poet anticipated that from the parents' level, and he answered instead the parents. The poet reminds the parents by saying that before the coming of the television, children would take great interest in reading different kinds of books. Books could be found everywhere, be it on the nursery shelves, nursery floor, in the bedroom, or the children's bed. Surprisingly, they would spend half of their lives in reading books, which was the only and the main source of entertainment in the past. The poet tells the parents that if they think of the past surroundings in the concern of their children, they will come to know that when the television was not invented, the children had great treasure of books in their rooms. Then the poet talks about the kind of typical fantasy stories that the children would read in his day. These were the stories of adventure with many interesting characters. The children used to read the books which were filled with tales of treasure islands, voyages, smugglers, pirates, ships, elephants, and cannibals. The small children used to read tales about Mr. Todd, Squirrel Nutkin, Pingling Bland, and Mrs. Tiggy Winkley, written by Beatrix Potter. These stories were fascinating and interesting. These stories would cast a spell on the minds of the small children. Then the poet makes an earnest appeal to the parents to throw away the television set and replace it with a bookshelf, ignoring all the objections. I repeat, ignoring all the objections of their children. The poet feels sure that sooner or later the children will turn their minds to reading books to spend their time. The poet shows his firm belief by assuring the parents that the children will not be able to stop reading books once they have started, and they will wonder why they had ever liked watching television. In the end, the children will thank the parents for introducing to the books. So, we'll thank the parents for doing the good to them by taking away the television away from them, and gifting them with the blessing of reading books. Now, students, the television is actually, you have understood by now that it is an idiot box. See students, the phrase is actually a transferred epithet in the sense that it is not the television set that is an idiot box, but the idiocy is produced in the watchers of television. Actually, what happens, when we watch television, it is a passive process on our parts. We do not actively engage our brain with the material as we do while reading and imagining the world on the page coming of life. This passivity ultimately makes the work of our brain slower and more strained. Amidst all the people of this time, Dull was perhaps singularly ahead of his time when he predicted that television would spell the death of imagination in children's mind. As a children's author, he must have known more than others how children's faces light up when they read or listen to a story, and how they often lose themselves in the details of a book as their imagination constructs entire world for them in their minds. However, television hands them ready images. As a result, their imagination suffers, and they later become skeptical in thinking that what they cannot see is not real. Even though Dull was writing primarily for children, the message of this particular poem seems more intended for their parents than for them. Very important, students. The dull believes that it is the parent's duty, I repeat, dull believes that it is the parent's duty to inculcate the habit of reading for hours, but habit of reading for hours in his or her children. Children might not know any better than watching television for hours, but parents do. In their hurry to get all their work finished, they ignore their children's long hours of television watching. However, by putting their own convenience aside, they should introduce their children, I repeat, they should introduce their children to the wonderful world of books. So students, by now you should have understood that why I have begun with the phrase. I have mentioned, I've begun my explanation today by mentioning the phrase that those who reads leads. Right? Now, Dahl actually wishes to warn the readers about how television can have the effect of dulling children's mind. Watching television actually can make the children unimaginative and prevent them from enjoying the fairy tales they are supposed to like. On the other hand, reading is a good habit for children. It sharpens the mind and introduces them to whole new worlds they never knew existed. Therefore, Dahl requests parents to bring back the bookshelves they had read before the invention of television in their homes.